We're on?
Yes, we are.
Welcome, everybody, to The Edge's Facebook page. #1 rated show at this particular time. It is 3 to 5 things we didn't have time to talk about today. I am your host, Fred Kennedy. I'd like to thank our sponsor, Corey's Clothiers, 569 Danforth Avenue. They're like a sexy... I was about to make a sexual analogy about Corey's Clothiers, but I won't, because it's a classy store. But they can increase the odds of you getting to second base sometime in the near future. Corey's Clothiers, 569 Danforth Avenue. You'll think you're dreaming. Oh, there's a slogan right there. Is that a good one? You'll think you're dreaming. Is that good? So we're.
I think it's.
I think it's great.
Copywriting that, man.
I think it's great. I think it's a great slogan. I am having trouble with my shorts. I feel like, like they're too high. They feel too high. And I bleached them while putting stuff in my... Anyways, let's focus on this guy right here. According to the United Nations and the World Health Organization, 10% of the world's population is now morbidly obese. Look at that. By the way, great photo, because that is absolutely disgusting. Like, that guy's got some pokey outy nipples. And imagine getting that gig. Imagine landing that modeling gig. Oh, I got a modeling gig. What's it for? Morbidly obese guy in a little shirt. That's the gig that I got. Poor dude. It's upsetting. But that looks like a pretty tasty burger. Regardless, 10% of the world now classified as morbidly obese. And the thing is I don't think we're even really supposed to talk about it, because if you talk about it, it feels like you get accused of like body shaming people. There are people that are obese. Now, granted, there are people that are more predisposed to obesity than others according to their genetics. It's just a fact. But the big problem is that we're not getting kids to have enough exercise these days. They're sitting around, they're living sedentary lifestyles, they're just playing video games, and they're staying inside. Now, here's the thing. Kids should be outside playing. But I understand that a lot of kids don't get outside and play because they're not allowed to. Now, why is that? If you when I was like 3, my sister was like 5, we would go down the street to the playground, down the street, and we would go play there. We were 3 and 5. When I was 3 years old, I would play out in the backyard by myself. Nowadays, if you let like a 6-year-old kid out on the front lawn by themselves to play, people will literally call the police on you. They will call child services on you. And the thing is once child services investigates you once, you've permanently got a record. So all this busybody mentality and all this garbage is actually putting kids on the road to obesity. Also, we don't really do a lot of education in terms of just real life skills in school. There's real life things that we should be making sure that we're teaching kids in school. Like finances. Don't get credit cards. Don't get credit cards. They're terrible. That should be a class. It should just be called Don't Get Credit Cards, the class. And in order to pass, you have to not get a credit card. That's the class. Also, don't ever get a credit card in an airport. Why are there people trying to give you credit cards at airports? Who's thinking, I'm late for my flight? No, I'd like some air miles. Credit cards at airports. Don't do that. And number 2, you should have to learn how to cook when you're at school. Because if people could just cook good food at home, they wouldn't constantly be eating fast food and getting obese. And this is the real frustrating thing about this. I predict that for that one factor, that people are being busybodies, and then the second factor, that they don't know how to cook, third factor, that they get credit cards. I don't know if that necessarily fits into this issue, but it's definitely an issue. But the other big reason that this problem is only going to get worse is because nowadays you're not even allowed to talk about somebody's weight. You're not even allowed to say that being obese is a problem. Because if you say that's morbid obesity, that's not healthy. Why are you body shaming? You shouldn't be body shaming people. It's not about shaming. It's about health. Are you telling me that it is healthy when somebody can't walk up a flight of stairs? You're not being body positive by condoning that type of behavior. You're not. You're not. I'm sorry. It's not good. It's unhealthy and it's terrible. And it's frustrating. The frustrating thing about this is I don't want to crap on anybody. I don't want to make anybody feel bad about themselves and about their life choices and all that stuff. But I'm just saying that when you condone that behavior, when you accept that type of behavior, and you have kids growing up seeing that and thinking that's okay, they'll continue to do it. And we'll continue to have more and more and more unhealthy people. It's just unhealthy. Morbid obesity is just as unhealthy as smoking a pack of cigarettes a day. And you could line up like... And the worst part is nowadays you put a doctor on TV and they say that and people are like, oh, they're fat shaming. There's a difference between having a few extra pounds and being like morbidly obese. And I know it's hard to lose weight. Because like I hurt my back a few years ago. This is like, actually I hurt my back like 14 years ago. And I just started to gain weight. And it wasn't until about 8 years ago that I got my life together and I lost like 45 pounds. Okay? So I understand it's hard to do. But you've got to do it. So you can live around long enough and have all your awful predictions about humanity come true. That's the only reason to stay alive. That's it. Moving on. Okay. This gets my goat. All right? There was a play that was basically a reenactment of Shakespeare's Julius Caesar, and they kind of like twisted it so that Julius Caesar was Donald Trump, and a bunch of like big ticket sponsors. This is Shakespeare in the Park in New York, by the way. They pulled their backing because they said it wasn't okay to do something like that and to show Donald Trump being killed, blah, 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 even though they kind of allowed these types of things happen to Obama years earlier anyways. People are mad about it. Do you know why I'm mad about it? You should never, ever compare Donald Trump to Julius Caesar, ever. Donald Trump has nothing in common with Julius Caesar. Was I being too loud when I said in the paper there? I'm very adamant about this. I'm a big Julius Caesar fan, a big fan of Roman history. You cannot, which camera am I looking at? That one. You cannot compare Donald Trump to Julius Caesar, okay? Julius Caesar, like, I'm not saying Julius Caesar was a good guy, because he wasn't a good guy. He conquered and murdered hundreds of thousands of people. Like, he did a lot of bad things, but he was a goddamn tactical genius who changed history. Over 2,000 years ago, he died, and we still know his name. We still know all about his life. Do you know why? Because he did great, important, world-changing things. I could get into my list. You want me to start? You want me to tell a few little stories about Julius Caesar? I'll tell you a little story about Julius Caesar. Number one, when Julius Caesar conquered Western Europe, and when I mean conquered Western Europe, he conquered all of Western Europe. He took so much gold back to Rome that he devalued the Roman currency by a third. A third! If you look in terms of like per capita, like the value, you know how they always say like, according to inflation, this was worth this. He gave away the equivalent of $500 million to people. And you know why he did that? Just so that people would remember his name. Julius Caesar did incredible things. And he was like 19 years old. He was on a ship and he was captured by pirates. And they asked what his ransom should be. He gave the ransom. They're like, oh, we'll charge like 500 gold. He's like, you should charge 5,000 gold. And then once you get the ransom and set me free, I'm going to come back. I'm going to kill all of you. He's like 19 when he does this. And guess what? He did it! It's amazing. I absolutely love Julius Caesar. He's fantastic. Oh, look at that. It's Gaul. Guess what? He conquered it. He came in and there was over 50 barbarian tribes. I say barbarian tribes because that was the actual term. Barbarian back then was a reference to the languages of Germanic origins. In French, it sounded like bar, bar, bar. And the barbarian term came from the Romans making fun of the way that Western Europeans talked. It wasn't a term the way we think of that then. Oh, guess what? Then he crossed the English Channel and he conquered that too. Donald Trump is not Julius Caesar. That, you're going to compare that to Julius Caesar? That. Come on. He's like Grumio from Taming of the Shrew at best. Subtle Shakespearean reference. Moving on. The Canadian military is going to get an additional $62 billion in funding over the next 20 years. And I think that's a great thing. And here's the reason why. The reason why they want to increase military spending in Canada isn't some big warlike thing. It's because the Americans have, under Donald Trump, of course, have decided that they need to step away from their role as a leader in NATO and United Nations peacekeeping efforts and all this stuff. They don't want to be the one carrying the cross anymore. So Canada, our role as a global player, we need to step up and we need to do more. And I really do believe that Canada does need to do more. We used to have a reputation as being one of the people to go in when things were bad, and over the past like 20, 30 years, things have just gotten worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. You should really do some reading about all the warfare that happened. Like, there's a book by Romeo Dallaire called Shake Hands with the Devil, and it's about how the United Nations was in places and they knew that genocides were about to be committed, and they weren't allowed to do anything. There was nothing that they could do, and they had to just literally stand by and let hundreds of thousands of people get massacred because they just didn't have the equipment and they didn't have the manpower to do anything about it. So I think that that's a really good thing. Canada has like a reputation of being like out there in the world, being places where nobody wants to be, a lot of humanitarian effort. And here's the thing, like I got this picture of Afghanistan, and whenever you talk about Afghanistan, people always really get up on their high horse and they get angry about the things that go on. And they talk about all the injustice this, the injustice that. And they really have no idea that all the stuff you never hear about is the playgrounds that are built for children that they get mined. And the soldiers are over there literally taking explosives off children's hospitals and playgrounds. The roads they build, the bridges they built, the irrigation trenches that they redig. All these things that they do to help people out aren't the things that you ever hear about. The only time you ever hear about something is when somebody has like a really clever headline that they want you to click on. It's not about telling the truth anymore. It's just about getting clicks. It's about getting clicks. The truth is clicks now. It's upsetting. It's terrible. Now, here's the thing. I'm going to say something that might be a little bit controversial. I really do think, and I'm not saying, like, listen, I'm not saying I can't be convinced otherwise, but I really think that Canada would be, I don't know, I think it'd be good if we had mandatory military service for 2 years. Like when you turn 18, there could be exceptions for that, of course. Odds are if they gave exceptions, it'd wind up just being rich people being able to get out of it. But I'm talking like for medical reasons, maybe if you're going into like you're becoming a doctor. Actually, here's the thing. This is my reason for saying it. I'm not saying I want to see Canada get all militarized or anything, but I am just saying that we always talk about how we lack a defining Canadian experience, a universal Canadian experience. If everybody in this country had to go through 2 years of military service, that would be something. We talk about a lack of diversity and representation in the Canadian military. If everybody had to do it, you would have a very diverse, very reflective Canadian military of the people that are in this country. Thirdly, because I'm really getting into this, I really believe that there are a lot of minds out there that just don't get tapped because they don't have money to go to schools. Like, this is the thing about the military. When you join the military, you don't just become a soldier and get a gun and go shoot stuff. They all have all kinds of trades that are in the military. Like, let's just say you wanted to be a heavy-duty mechanic. They will literally pay you while you learn how to become a heavy-duty mechanic. Not like where you go to trade school and spend $30,000 a year. You'll make like $50,000 a year to learn how to be a mechanic. You want to be a telecommunications engineer? They do that too. You want to be a nurse? They do that too. You want to work on planes? They do that too. You want to be a pilot? You'll do that too. So you're actually going to get taught a trade while you're there. You'll get paid rather than getting into student debt to the tens of thousands of dollars. I think it'd be awesome. I'm not saying that you can't convince me otherwise. I'm just saying I can see a lot of positive ideas coming from it. And also, when it comes to humanitarian efforts, like we're dealing with all the flooding on the island, you'd have a mass stock of manpower able to do things. Like the soldiers that came and shoveled our driveways years ago when we had a snowstorm and the rest of the country continues to laugh at it. Look, heavy-duty mechanics, fixing stuff. Did they get student debt to do that? No, they got paid to learn how to do it. Exactly, free education. And plus, it would be nice to have like a unifying Canadian experience. And there's a lot of people out there, like my father was headed to jail. Like all my in-laws tell me my father was headed to jail. He was one of those kids that like grew up without enough structure because he had a big family in a very poor part of the country. They were Glace Bay coal miners. He was a bad guy. And then he got put in the military and he got a lot of structure put in his life and he never left. He stayed in it for his whole life. I can think of a lot of benefits to this. Look at that girl. She's crying. She's probably crying because she's watching the end of Toy Story 3. Toy Story 3 is one of the most tragic endings that you will ever... It's not tragic. It's just as heartfelt. You know, you get feelingsy, you get cry, you get emotional about all that stuff. And the new Cars movie coming out, I'm actually getting emotional about the new Cars movie. Like, almost as emotional as I got during the opening scene of Up, which, by the way, will rip the soul out of your chest, throw it on the ground, stomp and grind it into the floor with a heel. The new Cars movie, by the way, coming out, Cars 3, is sort of like the Rocky version of it. It's where Lightning McQueen is on the verge of retirement. He just can't keep up with anybody anymore. And I don't want to like it. I want to hate Cars. I want to hate the Cars franchise. Larry the Cable Guy is in it. Drives me absolutely insane. But here's the thing. My kids love it. They absolutely love it. And when I watched the trailer for the new Cars movie coming out, and I realized Lightning McQueen, his whole life, his whole career is coming to an end, I don't see Lightning McQueen. I see me, and I see my kids growing up and moving on, and I'm losing out on their childhood, and time is precious, and it's passing me by. And that's the moral of the movie. And the thing is, when I was younger, I didn't get it. I didn't care. I thought I'd be young forever. But now I see my kids, they're like growing up. They're not liking the things they used to like anymore. It's like a metaphor for everything. You can't choose what your kids like, but you can force your tastes upon them, which is why they really love the Incredibles movie. And the next one, Incredibles 2, comes out next summer, and I'm just going to throw this out there. And this might be more controversial than me saying that I think we should have like 2 years of military service in Canada. I am more excited for the new Incredibles movie than I am for Star Wars The Last Jedi. Sorry, just going to say it. Just going to say it. I don't need more pandering foolery in another Star Wars movie. Make another Rogue One. Make Rogue One 2, The Funeral, where they just basically bury all the people that died in Rogue One. Sorry, gave away the ending. They all died. But that was better than The Force Awakens. That line, don't hold my hand. Can you be more pandery? I liked Rey. I'm just saying that whole don't hold my hand scene. Just really don't hold. Moving on. Oh, look at that. Orgies. Swingers. There was a study, this was done by the University of Oxford in the UK, saying that people that are involved in open relationships and swingers and all that don't have better sex lives than you and me. Their sex lives are just as miserable, just as awkward as the rest of us. Because when anybody talks about, like, I met a dude who was a swinger and he started talking about how absolutely amazing it was, all I could think was, meh, sure, it's great. It sounds like, you know what that sounds like? That sounds like a lot of work and you got to wear a lot of condoms. Guess what? I'm married. I don't ever wear condoms and it's the best. Another thing that I'm always hearing about is how millennials are all having, like, the best sex ever. Like, oh, my God, they're all sleeping around. They're all having sex with everybody all the time. It's the best. We're on Tinder. We're on Snapchat. We're showing people our dicks and our boobs. It's the absolute best, man. Oh, yeah. They're not either. Their sex lives are just as miserable and just as awful as everybody else. In fact, the generation that had the most promiscuous sex was Generation X, apparently. They had the most. But I'm just going to say it. I don't think they were having it either. And even if they were, it was a lot more pubic hairy. Like, there was so much body hair. And this isn't me saying that, you know, I only like it when a chick shaves and they've got to shave for me because I'm a man. No, man. I trim the hedge too. I do it. I want my... listen, if I am lucky enough to get that, I don't want her to have to floss her teeth at the same time. You know what I'm saying? I just feel it's respectful. Do unto others as you would to yourself. I am a caring and respectful lover. Therefore, I shower and trim before every... Got a DeWalt prize packet, by the way. As well as some passes to the wine festival here at Sugar Beach this weekend. 416-870-EDGE. First caller to say hardwood floors gets the prize. Could you actually use a DeWalt tool to sand a floor?